Welcome back, my friends. It is the time of the season for us to, of course, think about our families and how Santa's going to come down the chimney and bring the kids toys and whatnot. However, it's also the time of year that when we look at another person and find out their need is much greater than toys, then the real meaning of the season comes to heart. We want you to hear a story that is happening to a family nearby. And we're joined in studio by Diane Cetera, who's going to tell us this story about her daughter and her grandson who have been going through the most unbelievable year. Diane, I can't imagine what the last year has been like. Can you describe it for us?
It's actually been pretty traumatic. Zane has been in and out of the last year at this time. Within 40 days, he was in the hospital 25 days. And they begged for him to come home Christmas Eve so he could be home with his brother and his parents.
What is a normal day? I don't know if that's the right word, normal. But what is a day like for Zane?
When Alyssa does get up in the morning, sometimes she doesn't really get to sleep long. Zane, a couple of nights ago, he was actually last night, he was up at 2 in the morning and awake for the day. So around 6, she brings him downstairs and she feeds him. He is on a 24-hour continuous feeding tube, but when he eats solid foods, he's disconnected, so that takes about 45 minutes to feed him. Zane also has a 4-year-old brother that Alyssa has to tend to and make breakfast and get herself ready for work, get Gavin ready for the day, and get Zane ready for daycare. And when they leave the house, Alyssa drops off Gavin at daycare. Sometimes it's an easy drop-off, sometimes it's not. And then she has to bring Zane to daycare, and the woman is just wonderful. She's amazing, can't thank her enough. And she drops off Zane, and then she's off to work.
And that's the part that also you have to think about. She works herself. Give us a little sense of her day and all of that.
I think she works because she needs her sanity. She needs to get away from this medical stuff. She's a learned doctor at this point. But she's working part-time. The company she works for is very, very accommodating, so it's to her advantage. And they knew this when they hired her.
I wish people could feel how everyone has taken it. I want to start with Gavin. He's how old? 4?
Gavin is 4.
He
had a hard time in the beginning because all he knew of was Mommy having a baby and the baby being sick and being in the hospital. And where he was just a newborn, Mommy had to stay at the hospital. So his other grandparents and my husband and I would take care of him. I would meet them at the hospital, so changing of the guard, if you want to call it that. Some nights I would stay at a hotel with Alyssa and Gavin in Boston near the hospital so that her husband could be at the hospital with Zane. And then the next morning we would switch so that Alyssa could be with Zane and Mike could be with Gavin. But that was the whole month of December.
And I understand that Mike is a pilot.
Yes, he is.
And is he gone often?
Yes, he is. He's gone between 3 to 7 days at a time. So many nights Alyssa is alone.
What does an overnight care for Zane look like? You already mentioned her daytime. What about
her
nighttime
overnight,
care?
Zane goes to bed early, about 6:30, but we don't let him cry, because if you let him cry, he'll get gas in his belly and then his feeding tube will need to be vented. So sometimes it can take 5 minutes to 45 minutes to get him to sleep. And then during the night, he doesn't like to sleep. He can be up for a few hours. If he wakes up and starts crying, you have to rush in there to put the binky in his mouth because, like I said, if he gets too much gas, he has to be vented. So he does not sleep much at all. It varies. Some nights he's good. Some nights he just a couple of hours here, a couple of hours there.
So now this is, for the whole household, everyone's up when Zane's up.
Yep, and sometimes Gavin is up too, so it's just like a party at 2 a.m. That's how Alyssa has to deal with it. She considers it a party.
How do you deal with it, the grandmom?
I've had a lot of stress. I even ended up in the hospital with chest pain. He was in Children's Hospital last January, and they were trying to draw blood. It took 6 nurses to restrain him and 2 hours to try to draw blood, and they got nothing. And I said to Alyssa, I'm having chest pains. And she said, Mom, come on. And I said, no, really? So they wheeled me down to Brigham and Women's, and I was there for 16 hours for observation, but I knew it was stress.
Diane, give us a sense of how many therapies Zane is going through.
He has craniosacral therapy, PT, OT, speech. The Division for the Blind comes to the house also. Perkins School for the Blind have actually built this chair for him so that he can sit up in that. He has a visiting nurse come to the house, but he really, really does very well with the craniosacral therapy.
So right now, what would the biggest help be for Alyssa, for Mike, for the family?
They need sleep. Mike is away a lot, and Alyssa does it all, and she just needs sleep. I think if she could sleep, she'd be able, not that she doesn't do an amazing job now, but I think it would be very beneficial for her to get some sleep.
What would make 2019 better for the whole family?
If someone could come to the house, someone to just sit in his room, even if they just sit in there and read a book, if he sleeps all night, at least Alyssa wouldn't have to worry about it.
Someone who's trained in
Yes,
the
trained
G-tube
and qualified in the G-tube. Doesn't necessarily have to be a nurse, but someone who is trained and qualified.
If you were to make a wish, put that wish into your own heartfelt words.
I just want them to be healthy. I just want them to be healthy. You don't expect this to happen in your family. I work with special need kids, and never did I ever think that this was going to happen to me. I didn't think I'd have a grandchild who was sick like this.
Diane, we're going to help you.
Thank you.
We're going to be there for you. You do believe in miracles.
Sometimes.
We're going to be there for you. Diane, stay right there. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we're going to try to get a hold of Alyssa and hear her own words about this story. Can you describe, some of this year for us?
When he was born, he came out blue. He had to be resuscitated. Thought we were in the clear after that. Came home, thought everything was healthy. Then he failed his hearing test. We thought that was, the end of the world, that we would have a deaf child. And then around 2 months old, he just started crying nonstop. And after a week and a half of trying to take out different allergens, we were sent to St. Luke's for failure to thrive because he was losing weight. And after 2 days at St. Luke's, we were rushed by ambulance up to Boston for a metabolic emergency, where we spent the entire month of December in the hospital, in the PICU, basically testing him for any condition that they could think of. He has 700 pages worth of medical notes from that stay. During that time, our 3-year-old didn't understand why my husband and I weren't home. Every night we were taking turns. My husband and I saw each other for about an hour and a half each day as we would switch shifts at the hospital. His nasal NG tube fell out a few times. He ended up having a G tube put in at the end of January. And he's basically just taking a really long time to gain weight and reach any milestones. He's like a perpetual newborn.
The milestones must be like little steps for you to say milestones.
We call them inch stones.
Oh, absolutely.
So even though he's a year old, he can barely hold his head up. He he just rolled over for the first time last week.
And how old is he?
14 months.
And it's the first time the baby's rolled over.
Yeah.
If there was any one thing, Alyssa, any one thing that we could give you, tell me, what would that be?
Medical answers. I don't think you can give those. Or some kind of way to get him better. But I think to get him better would require our family to be rested so we can be on our A game to advocate for him and do the best we can to help him, to get him to his fullest potential.
You need sleep, don't you, my darling? You need sleep.
In the last 3 days, I've gotten about 5 hours.
Alyssa,
collectively, not in a row.
we are going to help you, all right?
That's amazing.
You just wrap that around your beautiful little heart, you and Mike and Gavin, and you just know that we are going to help you.
That's amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, darling. We love you so much.
Love you, honey.
Thanks, Mom.
I'll call you after, okay?
We need to take a quick break, but before we do, folks, Diane and Alyssa, you have no idea how much we are so grateful to have had you both here with us to share this story. If this isn't the true meaning of Christmas, I don't know what is.